Hi everybody, Mark here from pondalgaesolutions.com, and today I want to talk very briefly, or as briefly as I can, about a question that we get quite often regarding microbial treatments for ponds, beneficial bacteria treatments. The most important thing that I see with folks regarding the use of these microbials is understanding the dosing requirements to get a positive effect in your pond. Now, the microbials in general are very safe to use. They are super safe for fish, pets, people, aquatic wildlife of all kinds. There's just not any real downside to them. But they also have to be used according to a certain demand that the pond may have. They've got to be used in enough quantity to shift the pond over to a more balanced state nutrient-wise in order to see improvements like algae to start to go away or reduce, or to prevent outbreaks of any kind like that. So you really want to focus on getting the dosing right off the bat to get the best results, and that's really the premise of this video. So, and I also want to preface it by saying it doesn't matter the brand, it doesn't matter the type of microbial you're looking to use, whether it's liquid, powder, packets, or something like our spheres. Absolutely does not matter. There will be a dosing suggestion somewhere in relation to that product. And that dosing suggestion will probably be either on a per gallon basis, it's always related to volume, but it'll be on a per gallon basis, or an acre-foot basis for some larger ponds and lakes. So those are the two kind of reference points you're going to use. Now, on our site at Pond Algae Solutions, under the Resources tab right here, you'll see partway down a link to pond calculators. And these calculators will help you if you put in the average length, average width, average depth. You can convert those numbers over to acre feet, gallon volume, and surface acres. And more specifically, I would say these first two are the ones you'll want to focus on. Gallon volume is probably the most common of them all. And you really want to establish what volume your pond has before you go forward with this stuff. Once you find that out, then that number, whatever that is, let's say it's 250,000 gallons for something in a quarter acre size pond. That's going to be your baseline. If your small pond comes out at 5,000 gallons, that's going to be your baseline for treatment. In other words, you're going to take your product, you're going to use their dosing instructions, you're going to reference it to the gallon volume of your pond, and you're going to dose appropriately, making sure that you do not underdose to your volume. But understand that the volume amount is your baseline. Very likely you could see a need to go higher than that, because we're not just treating the volume of the pond, we're also trying to treat or work on the nutrient load. And nutrient loading is the variable. It could be highly variable depending on the individual pond. Small ponds are affected greatly by fish load. Years ago you started out with a few fish and they were small, and then year by year they expand in number and they grow in size, and before long you're down the road and all of a sudden you've got all these fish, and they're putting a lot of pressure on a contained ecosystem. Even if your pond filter is really good, they have their limits, and so you have to consider the fish load that the pond is under. On larger ponds and lakes, you've got environmental factors, leaf debris, nutrient-rich runoff, source waters that are nutrient-rich, historic algae or duckweed blooms that eventually die and sink. And so you're just building up compost in that pond. And eventually the pond will hit a tipping point where maybe you never had any problems before, but all of a sudden now this year things warmed up and you get this bloom. And so our premise really for the last 20 years has been to try to use ecologically friendly methods to try to turn a pond around, balance it out, and restrict this type of growth or curb it if it's already started. And we prefer to go this route before ever resorting to a chemical algicide. Fortunately, we have pretty good luck with these, but one of the reasons that I think we have the success we do is we don't just follow a label direction verbatim. In other words, these products are so safe that and this came about in some early testing for us way early on. We had a 1/4 acre pond that was 2/3 covered with algae, columning up from the bottom and spreading across the surface. This was a pond that had very clear water, but it had a lot of leaf debris on the bottom. You could see it, and it was at the bottom of a ravine where there's a lot of runoff from farm fields above on the ridge, and it was coming into that pond on an ongoing basis. And we came in, 1/4 acre pond, we treated it with a 1/4 acre treatment. We saw very minimal improvement, very slight, but it was so minimal. You'd really have to be watching it to notice. And because we saw at least some response, we thought, well, we're going to test this dosing out a little bit. And not really knowing why, but we just felt we needed to give everything a fair shake. And so we increased the dosage bit by bit until we hit double the dose of what was required. And within 5 days, the pond cleared up. And it looked miraculous, but really what it was, we finally hit a tipping point where we used enough beneficial bacteria to offset not only the pond volume, but also the nutrient load, very high nutrient load that pond was under. And we were able to keep that pond clean for years that way because we were able to neutralize those nutrients coming in on a regular basis. And in those early years, we didn't have aeration either. We weren't using aeration. And had we brought that in earlier, I think we would have seen even a better response with a lower dose. However, we did get the clearing that we wanted. And so we learned a valuable lesson at that point that we have to treat not only for the pond volume, but also the nutrient load involved too. And so the typical product, like these biospheres, for example, are going to be dosed for gallon volume. And this product will treat up to 250,000 gallons. But if I have a 250,000 gallon pond or a 200,000 gallon pond, I may start with these, but if I don't see the response that I'm looking for or the response is minimal, I may go up to twice this much. And the safety margin is so large with this type of product. All these biologicals are very safe to use. And the worst effect you're going to see is some cloudy water come on when the counts of the microbes get very, very high. But you've got to really go at it to do that. And once you stop the treatment, the water will clear up pretty readily, but it doesn't really harm anything. And so it's a very different contrast to using a chemical where you have to be very aware of the amount of product you're using versus your gallons. You just you don't have a lot of leeway to go above a certain amount, where the biological products that you see on the market are just the opposite. So I think one of the biggest challenges for people is getting the dosing right of these products and having the confidence to know that they can use them liberally if they have to in order to try to improve their pond's condition. Now, I don't go forever. I don't work forever to try to turn a pond around with biologicals. I'll give it usually 30 to 60 days. Normally, it's going to be around the 60-day mark where I'm starting to determine whether this is worth pursuing or not. Continued work with biologicals, I mean. And I may switch to another biological first before going to a chemical, or looking at things like ultrasound for large ponds or UV lights for small ponds or whatever. There's different things you can go and add into the equation. But first and foremost, I would say the vast majority of ponds that we work with, we start with biologicals, and many we have such good luck with them that we don't have to go further. And we know that we've been able to turn many ponds around safely, and I think that's important. But making sure that the dosing is right is a critical step. Knowing your pond size and dosing appropriately to the pond volume, as well as the nutrient loading the pond is under, is the key to getting the best results with any biological treatment. So I hope that helps. That's a common question we get along the way, and so I wanted to address that in this video. By all means, get in touch with us at pondalgasolutions.com if you have questions about your pond. We respond to all of them personally, but we also, if there's a common theme running through the mix, we may share more videos with you on these questions, and hopefully the answers will help you enjoy a better, healthier, cleaner pond. Anyway, thanks for joining us. I hope you have a great day wherever you are, and we'll talk to you again soon.